It was just a lump of corroded bronze, sat in a museum drawer for 100 years. That object, the Antikythera Mechanism, it forced historians to tear up the timeline. The timeline of human invention. This artifact rewrote what we thought we knew about ancient technology. It was a chance discovery found at the bottom of the sea. And it was a computer 2,000 years ahead of its time. Its gears are intricate. They point to a lost chapter of science. And it makes you wonder how much of our history is still waiting, forgotten, in the dark. The discovery of the Antikythera mechanism was an accident. It was spring of 1900 in the Mediterranean. A group of sponge divers from Simi were working near the island of Antikythera. Then a storm came up. It was just a local squall. They took shelter. When it passed, the captain, Dimitrios Kontos, went down to look for a new spot to dive for sponges. About 40 meters down, he saw the outline of a shipwreck. And statues lying on the seabed, bronze arms, marble faces. It was a Roman cargo ship that sank around 60 BC. It was carrying luxury goods from Greece to Rome. The divers had found one of the richest underwater sites ever known. With help from the Greek Navy, they spent almost a year salvaging it. They brought up statues, glass, jewelry, coins. And they also brought up some lumps of corroded bronze and wood covered in sea crust. On the dock, those pieces looked like junk. They were set aside and sent to the museum in Athens. They sat there for months. Then an archaeologist named Valerios Stais was looking at the collection. He saw something on one of the lumps. Through the crust, he saw a small, perfect bronze gear. Then he saw another gear. Inside what looked like a rock was a piece of intricate machinery. Gears weren't part of ancient Greek art. They belonged to a much later time. But these were from a 2,000-year-old wreck. That moment of noticing started the mystery. It took over a century of work to even begin understanding it. The most valuable thing on that ship wasn't a statue or gold. It was that corroded lump waiting for someone to see the gears inside. The gear was visible. Just that one piece, and it was a puzzle. It didn't make sense to the archaeologists who found it back in the early 1900s. The wreck was ancient Roman. But this thing looked like it came from inside a modern clock. So the first logical thought was that it couldn't belong. It had to be contamination. Maybe something from a later time, a medieval astrolabe that fell in the water long after the ship went down. That theory was comforting. It kept the timeline clean. Because the ancient Greeks, they were philosophers, they were artists. The idea that they could make a complex machine with interlocking bronze gears, that was unthinkable to most scholars. So the strange lump was catalogued, it was set aside, and it was largely forgotten. A curious footnote, an oddity that didn't fit the story. For almost 50 years it sat there, in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. A silent rebuke, really, to what people thought they knew. The technology to study it properly that didn't exist yet. X-rays were new, and the crust was thick, mineralized. It hid everything. That long period of obscurity, that's a crucial part of the story. It shows how preconceptions can blind you. When evidence contradicts a deep belief, the first instinct is to explain it away. To call it a mistake, the Antikythera mechanism wasn't just waiting for better science. It was waiting for a shift in imagination. It needed someone to look at that impossible gear and ask a different question. What if the timeline is wrong? The shift in imagination came in the 1950s. There was a British science historian, Derek de Solla Price. He was looking for a new project. He was in a museum and someone showed him those strange lumps from Antikythera. It intrigued him. He wasn't an archaeologist. He was a historian of technology. And he saw something different. He saw a machine. He got permission to study the fragments, but the problem was seeing inside. The corrosion had fused it all into a solid block. You couldn't take it apart, so he used a new tool, X-ray imaging, a pioneering use for archaeology. For the first time, he could look through the crust. And what he saw, it wasn't just a gear or two, it was a whole system, a precise, intricate clockwork of bronze wheels. Some were tiny, teeth finer than a grain of rice. Others were larger, driving complex motions. This was a level of mechanical sophistication that, according to the history books, shouldn't have existed for another 1,000 years. In 1959, Price published a paper. He gave it a title that would echo an ancient Greek computer. That word computer was deliberate, shocking. He argued it wasn't a toy or a simple model. It was a dedicated instrument for calculation, an analog computer built to predict the movements of the sun, the moon, the planets. He'd deciphered some inscriptions on the casing. They were a user manual describing celestial cycles. His work was a breakthrough. It moved the mechanism from curious artifact into the center of a scientific revolution. He proved the ancient world had a mechanical genius we never knew, but Price's map was incomplete. The X-ray technology of his time could only show so much. He identified the purpose correctly, but he could only reconstruct a partial picture of the internals. Many gears stayed hidden, their functions a mystery. His interpretations, brilliant and foundational, were like seeing a shadow of the true machine. He opened the door, but the full complexity of the Antikythera mechanism would need a new generation, with tools he could only dream of to step through. The full map of the machine was still hidden in the stone. You needed a new kind of light to find it. So in the early 2000s, this team came together: scientists, historians, the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project. They wanted to see what couldn't be seen. They used something called microfocus X-ray computed tomography, which is basically a medical CT scanner, but built for something this small, this fragile. It could look through every layer of corrosion. It could see inside those calcified lumps without ever touching them. That was the revolution. Before that, Derek de Solla Price had flat X-ray images, just shadows on a wall. This new scanning gave you a full three-dimensional map. Every hidden gear, every pin, every millimeter of text etched inside, it all became visible. It was like being able to walk through the walls of a building you'd only ever seen from the outside. The scans showed inscriptions so faint they were like ghosts. A technical manual naming planets, describing cycles, explaining the dials, and you could count the gear teeth with absolute precision. 127 teeth on this wheel. 223 on that one. These numbers weren't random. They were mathematical keys. From that digital blueprint, the team built the first truly accurate three-dimensional model. They could animate it, watch the gears turn in virtual space, tracing the paths of celestial bodies the way the ancient designer meant them to. That was the moment the mechanism really spoke. It wasn't just a collection of parts anymore. It was a coherent system, an elegant one. The CT scan became the Rosetta Stone for this ancient computer. It translated the language of bronze and mathematics into a story we could finally read. And what that story told them next, that was even more astonishing than anyone had guessed. The digital blueprint showed this incredible piece of engineering. You're looking at a wooden box about the size of a big shoebox designed to be held. The front and back were bronze plates, and every inch of that bronze was covered in tiny Greek letters, a dense manual etched right into the metal. But the real marvel was inside. Open it up and you'd see this dense, layered forest of gears. At least 30 of them, maybe more, all cut from bronze sheets, all meshing together with this intricate purpose. The craftsmanship is what still stuns engineers. Every single gear tooth was a perfect little triangle, filed by hand to an astonishing precision. The spacing between the teeth, the alignment of the axles, it all had to be perfect. One mistake, one gear cut just a fraction off, and the whole delicate calculation would fail. This was a level of miniaturization, of mechanical tolerance, that wouldn't be seen again until the sophisticated clockwork of the 18th century, over 1,000 years later. And these gears weren't just in a simple stack. They were mounted on concentric axles, one inside the other, which allowed for differential motion. That's a complex trick where one gear can drive two others at different speeds, a fundamental concept for calculating the irregular orbits of planets and moons. That hand crank on the side, you'd turn it, and through this silent ballet of bronze, the entire cosmos would come to life on the dials. This wasn't a philosopher's toy. It wasn't a rich man's novelty. The Antikythera mechanism was a precision instrument built by masters who understood metal, mathematics, and the movement of the heavens. It represents a pinnacle, a fleeting moment where ancient engineering reached a height we never knew it had, and that leaves the most compelling question. If they could build this, what else did they know? That virtual model showed what the machine really was. It was a cosmic display, a model of the heavens you could hold. The front face was the most spectacular part, a single, large bronze dial, two grand concentric rings. The outer ring was a calendar, all 365 days of the Egyptian year. Inside that, a second ring for the 12 signs of the zodiac, and across this engraved backdrop, a single, elegant pointer moved, but this wasn't a simple clock hand. This pointer was driven by the entire gear train inside the box. You'd turn the side crank, the pointer would sweep around the dial, one full revolution in a single year. It showed the sun's precise position against the stars. A second, smaller pointer, probably tipped with a little silver ball, showed the moon, its position. Its phases, cycling from new to full, a few turns of the crank. You could watch the sun and moon dance through the seasons, see which constellation they were passing through on any given day. It turned astronomical tables into something visible, tangible, but there was a problem. The moon doesn't move in a perfect, steady circle. Its orbit is elliptical. It speeds up and slows down. To show this correctly, a simple gear moving at constant speed would be wrong. Their solution was a stroke of genius. Deep inside, they built a pin and slot mechanism. A small pin on one gear, a curved slot on the mating gear. As the gears turned, the pin would slide back and forth in that slot, subtly speeding up and slowing down the rotation of the moon pointer. This tiny physical interaction modeled the moon's irregular motion in bronze. It was a differential gear system, a concept so sophisticated it wouldn't be reinvented in the West for over 1,000 years. This front dial was more than a calendar. It was a dynamic orrery, a prediction engine, set the crank to a future date. A philosopher, a priest, a ship's navigator could see exactly where the sun and moon would be. Predict eclipses, plan festivals, understand the celestial rhythms that govern their world, and the inscriptions suggest it went further. There were almost certainly smaller, additional pointers. For the 5 known planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, each following their own complex paths across that same starry stage, to look at that front dial was to watch the ancient cosmos come to life. All driven by the silent, turning gears of a forgotten technology. The real challenge for this machine wasn't just tracking the sun, it was the moon. That silver pointer had a much harder job. For a long time, people watching the sky had seen something odd. The moon doesn't move at a constant speed. It travels, then it speeds up, then it slows down. That's the first anomaly. It's because the moon's path isn't a perfect circle. It's an ellipse to the Greeks. This was a problem. It didn't fit their model of perfect circles. So they came up with a theory. They said the moon moves on a circle, but the Earth isn't at the exact center. That offset circle, an eccentric, could explain the changing speed mathematically. It was a clever idea on paper, but the mechanism's builders did more. They built that idea, they made it from bronze. Their answer is called the pin and slot device. Picture two gears on one axle. The front gear has a pin. The gear behind it has a curved slot. As the first gear turns, the pin doesn't just engage the second gear. It slides along that slot. When the pin is at one end of the curve, the second gear turns slower. When it moves to the other end, the gear turns faster. This variation happens every rotation. It's a smooth, rocking change, and that change is what makes the moon pointer speed up and slow down on the dial, matching the real moon. They turned theory into mechanics. This isn't just a counting gear, it's a calculating gear. It shows a deep understanding. The designer had to know the astronomy of the eccentric circle. Then they had to invent a mechanical system to produce that motion. They had to figure out the exact curve of the slot and the pin's position to match the anomaly they observed. This is applied kinematics. It's a level of sophistication that just disappears after this. We don't see gearwork this clever again until the Renaissance clocks, over 1,000 years later. That one small assembly inside the crust is a signature. It's the mark of a mind that could connect ideas to things, turning thought into bronze, and in doing that, capturing the rhythm of the sky. The front dial was only part of it. The back of the device was where it got really complex. There were at least 5 smaller dials there, arranged in a tight circle. Each one was its own dedicated calendar. This was the part that handled the long-term cycles. The biggest one was the Metonic dial, named for Meton of Athens. It followed a 19-year cycle. That's 235 lunar months, almost exactly. It was the ancient solution to a basic problem. The lunar calendar and the solar year don't match up. The Metonic cycle kept the months in line with the seasons over decades. A pointer on this dial would move 1 notch each year. A full circuit took 19 years. It told you what point you were at in the cycle. That was essential for setting festivals, for agriculture, and for knowing when an eclipse might be possible. Inside that was the Saros dial. That one tracked 223 lunar months, about 18 years and 11 days. That's the period where the Sun, Earth, and Moon return to nearly the same alignment. So a similar eclipse will happen again. If the Metonic dial showed you the window, the Saros dial gave you the specific month and day, and then for even more precision, there was the Exeligmos dial. A triple Saros cycle. After one Exeligmos, an eclipse doesn't just repeat in timing, it repeats in visibility from nearly the same place on Earth. They didn't just build one eclipse predictor. They layered them, checks and refinements across generations. Then there was a 4th dial. It's thought to track the 4-year cycle of the Panhellenic Games. The Olympics at Olympia, the Pythian Games at Delphi, the Nemean and Isthmian Games, these were the rhythm of the Greek world. This dial connected the machine directly to the social calendar. You could see not just the phase of the moon, but when the athletes would assemble. It tied the cosmic cycles to lived experience. All these dials together changed what the mechanism was. It wasn't just a model of the sky anymore. It was a unified time computer. One turn of the handle could answer so many questions. When are the next Olympics? What year is it in the 19-year cycle? Will there be an eclipse next spring? And in what constellation? It collapsed time, made the patterns of the cosmos and culture visible at once. This wooden case held a model of time built in bronze, and that ambition makes you ask a harder question. If this one device survived, who was brilliant enough to imagine it in the first place? The bronze was a library, etched across the front and back in letters so small you'd need a magnifying glass, were over 3,000 Greek characters. This wasn't decoration. It was the original user manual baked right into the machine. It tells you what you're looking at. One section labels the dials, this one for the sun, this one for the moon, this for the 19-year cycle. Another part explains the functions step by step, like a guide for an astronomer. There are long lists parapygmata that catalogue the risings and settings of stars for each day of the year. You turn the crank to a date, check the list, and you'd know which constellation would be visible at dawn. The language is direct, precise, dense with specialized terms. It's not poetry. It's a working document for someone who already understood the mathematics of the sky. That practical tone is a clue. It means the Antikythera mechanism wasn't a one-off demonstration. It was a tool built to be used. The inscriptions even detail eclipse colors, whether one might be red or dark or dim. Information crucial for prediction and for interpreting omens. Every word carved into that bronze was meant to be referenced, to turn the motion of the pointers into knowledge you could use. Decoding this text has been like finding the maker's notes tucked inside. The specific astronomical terms, the calendar systems referenced, even the style of the lettering, they all point to a specific time and place. They anchor this machine within the tradition of Greek mathematical astronomy, the kind that flourished in the centuries just before the Common Era. It's a product of that age when thinkers were trying to capture the logic of the cosmos, not just in equations but in physical form. The manual tells us how to use it. And it tells us who might have held it, what world of learning they belonged to. The sun and moon, that was just the start. The real aim was to get all 7 wanderers. The inscriptions, the gear fragments, they point to something bigger, a complete orrery, with pointers for the 5 planets they knew: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. But then the evidence just stops. The scans show empty spaces, broken axles, mounting points where these complex gear assemblies used to be. The planetary display is the big missing piece. Trying to rebuild it is like finishing a painting from just a few brushstrokes left behind. We know they meant to do it. The manual on the back cover names all the planets, lists their cycles. The problem was huge. Each planet moves on its own schedule. Mercury and Venus, they race around the sun faster than we do. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, they take years, decades, and they all do this strange thing. From where we stand on Earth, they stop. They go backwards for a while, then they start moving forward again. This retrograde motion, it confused people for thousands of years. To build that in metal, you need a gear train that can make a pointer slow down, stop, loop back, and then go forward again, all while it's still making its bigger circle around the dial. The Greek astronomers had a theory for it. People like Hipparchus, they had these models using epicycles. Picture a small circle. Its center is stuck on the edge of a bigger circle. Put a planet on that small circle, and it traces this loopy path against the sky, goes forward, then back. It was a brilliant idea on paper, but to make it in bronze, that's a different kind of genius. Scholars, people like Michael Wright, they've spent years trying out possible gear trains. They think it was nested epicyclic systems. One gear spinning inside another. That's how you get that looping motion. The evidence suggests the front of the machine had a whole series of these layered assemblies. Each one was like a tiny, ticking universe for a single planet. To see all 5 of those pointers moving at once, each doing its own dance, some fast, some slow, some looping back, that would have been something. It would have made the cosmos make sense. That missing display, that was the final goal. It wasn't just a calculator, it was a statement, a philosophical argument made out of gears. A proof that all the crazy complexity of the heavens could be brought down to orderly, predictable mechanical motion. That with one turn of a crank, you could make the whole known universe obey. The question of who it was for that answer is tied to the ship. The wreck at Antikythera, that wasn't just some old ship. It was a Roman merchant vessel, huge like a modern cargo ship. And it was packed with luxury. When it went down sometime between 70 and 60 B.C., it took a fortune with it: bronze statues, marble statues, glassware, gold jewelry, silver coins. The finest goods from the Greek world headed for the wealthy elite in Rome, and among all that in a wooden box was the mechanism. That placement matters. It wasn't with tools or supplies, it was with the precious cargo, so the device itself was a luxury item, something of immense value, intellectual and monetary. Maybe a Roman patron commissioned it, a general, a senator fascinated by Greek science, or a gift from a Greek ruler, a display of their culture's sophistication, sent to impress an ally in Rome. It could have been a scholar's prized possession, traveling with his library. The ship wasn't just carrying art, it was transporting knowledge. The mechanism was a different kind of masterpiece. A testament to Greek mechanical genius, considered as worthy of export as any statue of a god. So it changes how you see it. This wasn't a common calculator, something you'd find in a marketplace. It was bespoke, an elite instrument, a symbol of status and learning. Its loss in that wreck was a tragedy for its owner, but it created a time capsule. It preserved, by accident, a glimpse into the highest levels of ancient thought, a world where the lines between art, science, and luxury were beautifully blurred. Intricately blurred. Who could imagine something like this? It comes from a time of forgotten brilliance. To get the mechanism, you have to see the world it came from, the Hellenistic Age. That era grew after Alexander the Great. His conquests built an empire, but also a network, a web of cities and trade routes from Greece to Egypt, all the way to India's edge. For the first time, ideas and goods and people moved freely across continents. It was a time of explosive mixing, Greek philosophy meeting Babylonian astronomy, Egyptian engineering meeting Persian math. In the great new cities, especially Alexandria in Egypt, this blend created something new. The royal library there wanted to gather all the world's knowledge. It wasn't just a storehouse for scrolls, it was a research powerhouse. Scholars were paid to think, to argue, to experiment. They dissected bodies to learn anatomy. They calculated the Earth's size with stunning accuracy. They built steam engines and complex automata. This was a culture in love with the how. The Greek word is techn, the craft, the art of making. They believed the highest techn was to give physical form to abstract ideas, to turn theory into a working object. The Antikythera mechanism is the ultimate expression of that. Its techn made cosmic. Into this came astronomers like Hipparchus. He worked on roads in the 2nd century before the Common Era. Hipparchus was a giant. He made the first known star catalogue. He discovered the precession of the equinoxes, that slow wobble of Earth's axis that shifts the stars over centuries. And he perfected geometric models to explain the odd motions of the planets, using ideas like epicycles and eccentric circles. His work was purely mathematical. Equations and diagrams, but what if you wanted to see it, to show it? That's the leap the mechanism's maker took. The gears inside are a direct translation of Hipparchus's theories into bronze. The pin and slot device for the moon's anomaly, that's Hipparchus's eccentric circle mechanized. The proposed epicyclic gears for the planets, that's his planetary model given physical motion. The device doesn't just use Greek astronomy, it is Greek astronomy in a form you can hold and turn. The clues point to Rhodes or Corinth as its birthplace. These were major hubs, not just of trade, but of scholarship and precision metalworking. Rhodes was home to Hipparchus. Corinth was a wealthy crossroads. A master craftsman in such a city would have had the latest scientific scrolls, the finest bronze, a wealthy patron who wanted the universe in a box. This convergence made the mechanism possible. It was the product of a unique moment, a moment when abstract thought, artistic skill, and mechanical ambition met at the highest level. It shows a worldview that saw the cosmos not as a chaotic realm of gods, but as a supremely orderly system, a great celestial machine. Its logic could be uncovered, written in math, and then rebuilt here on Earth. The Antikythera mechanism is more than a calculator. It's a philosophical argument made from gear teeth, a declaration that the universe is knowable, predictable, beautifully mechanical. And that declaration echoed silently for 2,000 years, waiting in the dark for us to hear it again. The name that comes up again and again is Archimedes. Ancient writers mention he built a celestial sphere, a model of the heavens. It showed the motions of the sun and the moon and the 5 planets. When the Roman general Marcellus took Syracuse in 212 BC, that sphere was one of the great prizes. He brought it back to Rome. Cicero wrote about it 150 years later. He said he saw it. He said it showed the movements of the stars and planets so accurately, it was like looking at the sky. This wasn't just a story. Historians wrote about it, poets wrote about it. They described a bronze globe turned by some hidden gearing that copied the cosmos. The similarity to this device is hard to miss, so you have to ask, could the Antikythera mechanism have come from Archimedes, from his workshop or his mind? At first, the dates don't work. The ship sank around 70 BC. Archimedes died in 212 BC. That's a gap, almost 140 years, but ideas last. Archimedes wasn't working alone. He started a tradition, a school of mechanics, of mathematical thought. His writings on spheres, on centers of gravity, on complex curves, they were the foundation. It's possible his designs for a planetarium could have been kept, studied, improved over generations. Craftsmen in Alexandria or Rhodes a century later could have taken his principles and built on them, made a more compact version, a more sophisticated one. This mechanism could be the result of that line of thinking, the physical proof of that legendary idea. Whether his students made it or admirers much later, the mark is there. The device does what the old texts say Archimedes' sphere did. It takes planetary theory and makes it tangible. Makes it move, so in a way, it doesn't matter if he ever touched this specific box. The machine is a monument to his kind of thought. It shows that the things Cicero described weren't exaggerations. They were real. The genius to build a cosmic computer existed, the theoretical genius, the mechanical genius, and for a time, in the ancient world, someone used that genius to put the universe in a box, bronze and wood. This cosmic computer, it was a luxury object, a marvel of craft, but the details etched into the bronze show a tool for serious work. The eclipse predictions are too precise, the calendars are too intricate. It couldn't be just a rich man's toy. It was a practical instrument, and it served many masters. For an astrologer, this machine was a revolution. In the ancient world, astrology and astronomy were the same discipline. To cast a meaningful horoscope, you needed the exact positions of the planets at the moment of a person's birth or the founding of a city. Before this, that meant days of laborious calculation from tables. It was prone to error. With the Antikythera mechanism, you could simply turn the crank to the date, and there they were, the sun, the moon, likely the planets, all positioned against the zodiac. It turned a week's work into a minute's motion. It offered a powerful, tangible map of the heavens for interpretation. For a farmer or a sea captain, its calendars were a guide. A guide to the rhythm of the year. The Metonic dial tracked the 19-year cycle, lunar months against the solar seasons. It told you when to plant, or when the seas might be safer for travel. The Parapegma, that star calendar on the front, listed the heliacal risings of constellations, the first appearance of a star just before dawn. This was ancient meteorology. The rising of Arcturus might signal coming storms. The setting of the Pleiades marked the start of the sailing season. This device condensed generations of observational wisdom into a single, turnable interface. For a priest or a civic official, it was the master schedule for an entire society. The dial that tracked the 4-year cycle of the Panhellenic Games, the Olympics, the Pythian Games, that wasn't just a sports calendar. These were sacred events, tied to religious festivals, periods of truce, immense cultural pride. The machine could predict the correct month for the games years in advance, ensuring rituals were performed at the cosmically correct time. It could set the dates for local harvest festivals, ceremonies honoring specific gods, aligning human activity with the perceived will of the heavens. But perhaps its most profound purpose was educational. For a philosopher or a student, this was a revolutionary teaching aid. Concepts like the eccentric orbit of the Moon or the retrograde motion of Mars, those are incredibly difficult to grasp from numbers on a page, but to turn a handle and watch a pointer slow down, stop, and loop backward on a dial, that makes the abstract theory clear. Instantly clear, the mechanism was a three-dimensional textbook. It gave physical form to the geometrical models of thinkers like Hipparchus, allowing someone to see the logic of the cosmos in action. It served as a bridge, transforming complex mathematical astronomy into something that could be seen, touched, understood. In doing so, it did more than predict eclipses or set festival dates. It offered a powerful, comforting idea that the bewildering complexity of the universe was not chaos, but a beautiful, predictable order, an order that human ingenuity could not only comprehend, but could replicate in a box of bronze and wood. The possibility is haunting. Was the Antikythera mechanism a single miracle or part of a tradition? A lost school of mechanical genius that just vanished? Most scholars think it was rare but not singular. That level of sophistication, it argues against a lone flash. You don't invent differential gears in a vacuum. That craftsmanship implies a lineage, a master, apprentices, workshops where the secrets of bronze and mathematics were passed down. And we have hints. Cicero, about a century before the ship sank, described a similar device, a bronze sphere built by Archimedes, replicating the motions of the planets. He wasn't the only ancient author to mention these things. They weren't myths, they were descriptions of real instruments, so a small number of these cosmic computers were probably built. For wealthy patrons, for temples, for the great libraries, they were the pinnacle of a certain knowledge, a knowledge that wove together three threads. Advanced astronomy, the complex cycles worked out by people like Hipparchus, precise metalworking, casting and cutting bronze gears with teeth finer than a grain of rice. And kinematic design, the creative leap to turn mathematical models into interlocking physical parts. This synthesis was fragile. It needed stable centers of learning, funding, a culture that valued this blend of theory and craft. And that culture began to fade. The Hellenistic kingdoms that fostered such work were absorbed by Rome. The Romans were brilliant engineers but practical ones: aqueducts, roads, siege engines. They admired Greek science, collected its marvels as trophies, but didn't cultivate the same deep mechanical tradition. The knowledge became a luxury. Then came the fires. The great library at Alexandria suffered damage. Wars, instability, the fragmentation of intellectual networks. The hands-on knowledge of how to build these mechanisms was likely held by only a few workshops. When those workshops closed, when the masters died without passing on their full secrets, the tradition could have evaporated in a generation or two. The Antikythera mechanism is more than a marvel. It's a fossil of a technological path not taken, a glimpse of an alternate history of science where sophisticated analog computation emerged 2,000 years ago. That path vanished into silence for over a millennium, until the great cathedral clocks of Europe began to echo, faintly, with the same principles. Its survival asks what other peaks of human ingenuity have been lost because the thread of knowledge was broken. That ancient gearwork went quiet for centuries, but the need to map the stars, that didn't stop. It just changed shape. In the medieval Islamic world, you got the astrolabe. Brass engraved, a portable star chart you could hold. Its power wasn't in internal gears, it was in these plates and a rotating disc called the Rewrote. You'd hang it, line it up with the pole star, and then use the moving parts to answer questions. When a star rises, the sun's height, the start of Ramadan. It flattened the three-dimensional sky onto a two-dimensional plate, a brilliant device, a masterpiece of astronomy and art that moved from the Middle East into Europe. It shared the same goal as the Antikythera, to model the cosmos for use, but its mechanical soul was different, a computer of sight and alignment, not of turning gears. The knowledge of celestial cycles was in its engraved lines, waiting for a skilled hand to unlock it, not in a self-contained gear train doing the math for you. That was the path for over 1,000 years, stunning craftsmanship, deep intellect, but walking next to a lost road, the road of complex mechanical computation. Then, in the 14th century, in Europe's great cathedrals, something shifted. The drive to mark time with celestial precision led to the astronomical clock. Towers of gears and dials showing the hours, moon phases, positions of the sun and planets. The gear train returned, and with grandeur. But if you look at those early marvels, like in Prague or Wells, their gearwork is often about displaying separate cycles on separate dials. A wheel for the sun, another for the moon. They are magnificent displays, but they rarely integrate calculations the way the Antikythera did. They show the results. The Antikythera, with its pin and slot and epicyclic gears, it computed the irregularities inside its own bronze heart. That distinction is what makes the mechanism so singular. It wasn't just displaying known data, it was a dynamic simulator, a working model of astronomical theory. To find a machine that blends display and integrated mechanical calculation at that level, you have to jump forward. Past those cathedral clocks, past the Renaissance, to the intricate planetariums of the 18th century. That's the true measure of its isolation. Over 1,700 years between this ancient Greek device and its true mechanical heirs. It stands not as a primitive ancestor, but as a peer. A lonely peak in invention, not climbed again for almost 2 millennia. The mystery isn't just in the fragments, it's in trying to put them back together. To really understand this thing, you have to make it work again. That idea has driven people for decades, researchers, craftsmen. They've built these remarkable physical reconstructions. These aren't copies, they're experiments, bronze and brass tests of ancient thinking done with modern hands. One of the big efforts came from Michael T. Wright. He was a curator at the Science Museum in London. He spent years with the CT scan data, figuring out how the missing planetary gears might have functioned. And then he built it. His model is brass, fully functional, hand-cranked. When you turn that crank, you don't just see pointers move, you feel the gears engage. You hear that soft click of the teeth, and you watch this proposed system for the planets execute their slow loops across the zodiac. It's a working hypothesis. A theory you can hold. Then there are the digital resurrections. Teams at universities, Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, University of Cardiff, they built intricate simulations. Pure light and code, they can animate the device with perfect precision, test gear ratios, layouts that would be too difficult or expensive to make in metal. They can run the machine forward 1,000 years in seconds. Watch for errors in the cycles that would show a flaw in their blueprint, but the physical model gives you something the digital one can't. It's a visceral connection, the weight of the brass in your hands, the slight resistance of the crank, the way you have to turn it with a steady, thoughtful pace to follow the motion of the sky. This is experimental archaeology. Each successful turn of the crank on a working model is a silent validation. It proves the ancient engineers' math wasn't just abstract numbers. They were instructions you could follow 2,000 years later and get the same majestic result. Building these reconstructions bridges a gap. It turns the mechanism from a static, corroded artifact into a living dialogue, a conversation across centuries, conducted not with words but with the turning of perfectly cut gears. That final turn of the crank changes everything. The Antikythera mechanism isn't just a footnote, it's a historical earthquake. It forces a complete rewrite of a fundamental chapter. The chapter on the history of technology. For centuries, the story was linear. The ancient world was a time of philosophy and architecture. Practical, intricate machinery belonged to the later Middle Ages. The Renaissance, the era of cathedral clocks, this device shatters that timeline. It proves the Greeks of the 2nd or 1st century BC didn't just dream about the cosmos. They could engineer those dreams into reality. They had the mathematical insight, the metallurgical skill, the kinematic creativity to build a compact, precise analog computer. This moves the birth of sophisticated mechanical calculation back by over 1,000 years. The impact is profound. It fills a gap scholars never knew was there. We always had the theoretical work, the scrolls of Hipparchus, the geometric models, and we had the later practical tools like the Astrolabe, but what was missing was the bridge. The physical proof that someone could take pure theory and translate it into a working machine. The Antikythera mechanism is that bridge. It shows a direct, tangible lineage. From Greek mathematical astronomy to the very dawn of practical computation, each gear is a physical expression of an astronomical ratio. The pin and slot device is a bronze equation in motion. This connection rewrites the story of human ingenuity. It reveals the path to complex technology isn't a straight upward line, from simple to advanced. Instead, it can have peaks and valleys, moments of astonishing brilliance that are achieved, then lost, only to be rediscovered centuries later. This changes how we must view the ancient world. It forces historians to see antiquity not as a static, less capable precursor, but as a period of dynamic technological possibility. The Greeks, and likely other cultures, were far more mechanically capable than our textbooks suggested. They reached a sophisticated technological peak in gearwork and precision engineering, a peak that simply vanished from the historical record. It was forgotten. Buried under the sand of time, the mechanism challenges the idea of constant, linear progress. It whispers that our own technological civilization is not the first to grasp complex mechanics, merely the most recent to build upon the idea. It asks a humbling question. If this one device survived by pure chance, what other pinnacles of ancient tech have been lost forever? Leaving no trace for us to find, the story is no longer about what they couldn't do. It's about what they did, and what we are only now, 2,000 years later, beginning to understand. The gears are mapped, but the machine still has its secrets. Even with all the reconstructions, there are fundamental questions. They're debated in papers and workshops. The biggest puzzle is the planetary display. The inscriptions say it showed all 5 wanderers, but the physical evidence is incomplete. It's maddening. Were the pointers for Mercury and Venus ever installed, or was the device unfinished when it went onto that ship? And the gear trains for Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, how did they actually work? Researchers have proposed different layouts for those lost epicyclic systems. Each model works on paper, but without the original bronze, we may never know which one is correct. It's like having a blueprint for a revolutionary engine, but the page showing the exact piston arrangement is missing. Then the Eclipse predictions. The Saros and Exeligmos dials on the back point to this function. But how was the information presented? Were there markers on the dial for an eclipse month? Did a little bell ring? Did a marker appear in a window? The manual on the casing mentions eclipse colors and directions. It hints at a rich, interactive display we can only partly see. And there's the human mystery. We know the astronomers like Hipparchus, whose theories are in the gears. But we don't know the master craftsman, the one who translated those theories into bronze. Was it a single genius in a workshop on Rhodes, or a team in Alexandria pooling knowledge from the library? And who was the wealthy patron who commissioned such an expensive, bespoke instrument? Was it for a Roman consul, a Hellenistic king, the library of a great temple? These aren't trivial details. Knowing the creator and the first owner would anchor this marvel in a specific time and place, a social world. It would tell us about the networks of knowledge and patronage that made it possible. This leads to the most tantalizing question. Was it truly one of a kind? The craftsmanship is too refined. The design feels too mature to be a first attempt. It feels like a product of an established tradition. So where are the others? Maybe fragments of similar devices are in museum drawers right now, mislabeled as corroded lumps or unidentifiable scrap. Maybe future excavations at sites like ancient Alexandria will uncover another piece. Every advance in imaging technology offers new hope. A more powerful scan might reveal ghostly traces of text, or clarify the purpose of a disputed gear. Each decade seems to bring a new discovery from the same fragments, as if the machine is slowly yielding its secrets. One technological generation at a time. That's why the Antikythera mechanism isn't a closed case in a history book. It's a living field of research. It continues to challenge archaeologists, historians, astronomers, engineers. It forces collaborations across disciplines that don't often speak the same language. The machine's greatest legacy might not be the answers it provides about the ancient world, but the endless, fascinating questions it inspires in our own. It started as just a lump forgotten, and now it's this modern icon. That journey is its own story. The Antikythera mechanism, it's more than archaeology now. It's a cultural touchstone, something that speaks to our imagination. For decades after they found it, it was just in academic journals. Museum displays, a fascinating oddity but not a household name that changed in the late 20th century. New research showed its complexity. The story started to leak out of the labs into science magazines, then television documentaries. Every program called it the ultimate ancient mystery, a ghost from a more advanced past. The narrative was irresistible. A high-tech device on an ancient shipwreck. It had all the pieces of a great puzzle. It captured people who didn't care about Greek astronomy, because at its heart, it's a story about lost potential. A path not taken. We live in an age of silicon chips and digital code, and this intricate bronze computer resonates. It reminds us the drive to build machines to understand the universe isn't new. It's a human impulse as old as civilization. The mechanism is the physical proof. It connects our modern technological anxiety right back to the ancient world. You look at it and wonder, if they had this, what stopped them? Could history have been different? That question is fertile ground for storytellers. The device has inspired novels where it's a key to lost civilizations. It's in video games as an artifact of impossible knowledge. It's in speculative fiction as evidence of contact with other worlds. Or time travelers. These fictional takes are fantastical, but they spring from the same awe the real object inspires. They're a testament to its power as a symbol. It represents the idea that history isn't a settled record. It's a landscape where astonishing discoveries can still rewrite everything we think we know. Its journey from obscurity to icon mirrors our own growing awareness. We used to see the ancient past as primitive. Now we see it as a period of profound sophistication, capable of surprises that still humble us. The mechanism's story, accidental discovery, long neglect, gradual and stunning revelation. It's become a modern archetype. The template for the ultimate historical detective story. It feeds our desire for hidden truths. It assures us the past still holds marvels waiting in the dark for a curious mind to shine a light. That lump of bronze is a teacher now for engineers, not just for historians. The Antikythera mechanism, its design still inspires. Because it solves a very hard problem, and it does it with this elegant simplicity. The task: you have to model the irregular motion of the stars and planets. Using only gears, levers, a hand crank, no electricity, no microchips, no code, the solution had to be purely mechanical, self-contained, reliable. That constraint forced a creative genius. A kind that modern engineers can still look at and admire. The whole system is compact, integrated. It's a masterclass in optimization. Every gear has a purpose. Every tooth is part of a calculation. It takes complex astronomical equations and it translates them into physical motion. This isn't just a display. It's computation. The machine embodies the core concepts of any computer. Input from the user turning the crank, processing through that intricate gear train. Output on the calibrated dials. It proves these ideas aren't modern inventions. They're ancient human insights given physical form. Take that pin and slot device. The one for the moon's anomaly. Today, an engineer might use a digital servo motor, a software algorithm, to get that variable speed. The ancient maker used 2 bronze gears. A pin, a curved slot. It's a breathtakingly elegant mechanical solution. It achieves the same result through pure kinematics. This mechanism is studied in engineering history courses. As a pinnacle of pre-digital problem solving, it shows that if you understand a physical phenomenon deeply, you can mimic it with other physical parts. There's a beautiful directness to it. You can see the logic in the metal. You can trace the cause and effect with your finger. For contemporary makers. For master watchmakers, building a functioning replica is a revered challenge, the ultimate test of skill and understanding. It's not about copying, it's about conversing with that ancient designer. Across the centuries, trying to think in gears and cycles, the way they did, in an age dominated by digital abstraction, the mechanism stands as a powerful reminder. Innovation can spring from the most unexpected chapters of history. That elegant mechanical solutions have a tangible beauty, an intellectual satisfaction. That sometimes rivals the invisible processes of a silicon chip. It challenges our assumption that newer is always more sophisticated. Sometimes the most profound technology is the kind that makes the complex comprehensible. Not just calculable, this ancient computer, rescued from the seafloor, it continues to output its most valuable result, a sense of wonder and a humbling lesson. In the timeless nature of human ingenuity, the Antikythera wreck kept its secrets for a long time. The famous device was found, but the seafloor held more. Then in 2012, a team came back. It was a group from the Hellenic Ministry of Culture and Woods Hole. They had new tools. Their goal was to excavate what was left, using modern methods to understand the ancient ones. They brought an exosuit. It's a diving suit that lets someone work on the bottom for hours. It gives you human hands, but without the pressure, without the time limit. They used robotic vehicles to map the site. They made a 3D grid of everything, every piece of wood, every stone, and the finds were remarkable. A bronze spear, probably from a statue. A marble head larger than life of a man with a beard, glassware. Then they found something else, another lump covered in corrosion in sea growth. About the same size and shape as the one that held the first mechanism. They lifted it carefully. They brought it up. The question was immediate. Is this another mechanism? Could the ship have carried more than one, maybe a second device, a different version, maybe spare parts? The idea is powerful. Every scan of this new mass, every cleaning is done with that hope. The first mechanism was found in fragments. Could this be a piece that broke off, a part that landed somewhere else in the wreck, or is it from a separate object? A second machine lost on the same voyage. The answers are inside that crust, waiting for the right tool to see in. Every dive now is about possibility. Every pass over the sediment might turn up another gear, another plate with writing, another clue. This work is more than archaeology. it's a conversation with the past. A patient one, it offers context. One device is a wonder, two would mean something else. It would suggest a practice. More inscriptions could give us a name. A maker's mark, a tool could tell us about the workshop itself. The wreck isn't just a ship's grave anymore. It's a capsule, a snapshot of technology and trade from that era. The Antikythera mechanism might not have been alone. Finding another piece, hearing another whisper from those gears, that wouldn't just add to the story. It would change it. It would show us how common this knowledge might have been. The puzzle isn't complete. Pieces are still missing, and they might still be down there. In the dark, on the bottom, waiting, that single device doesn't just rewrite a timeline. It rewrites how we imagine the past. The Antikythera mechanism forces a shift in perspective. We have to look at the ancient world differently now, not as a place of static, simple technology, but as a landscape of possibility. If a culture could make a geared astronomical computer this complex, what else was within their grasp? That question sends a ripple through every museum collection, through every unearthed artifact. It makes historians re-examine objects, things once dismissed as decorative or ritual. Could a bronze disc with strange markings be part of a navigational instrument? Could those clay models be more than toys? The mechanism gives us permission to ask these questions with new seriousness, to challenge old assumptions about what ancient people could do. And this reconsideration highlights something else, an engine of innovation that's often overlooked. Cross-cultural exchange. The astronomical data in the mechanism's gears didn't come from Greek thought alone. It was built on centuries of observation by Babylonian astronomers. The Greeks absorbed that vast repository of records. They refined it with their own geometrical models, and then someone had the genius to mechanize it. This device is a physical testament to shared knowledge. It shows the greatest leaps happen at the intersections, where ideas travel along trade routes, where different ways of thinking collide. The Hellenistic world was a perfect incubator for that, a connected network from the Mediterranean to Asia. The mechanism is a product of that globalized ancient intellect, yet its survival tells a darker tale, a more cautionary one. It's a stark monument to the fragility of knowledge. This was a pinnacle of engineering and science, so advanced it wouldn't be matched for over 1,000 years, and then it was gone, not just the object. The very know how to build it, the workshops closed, the masters passed without apprentices, the scrolls detailing the principles were lost, a whole branch of sophisticated technology vanished from human memory. Its existence is a powerful warning. Complex understanding isn't a permanent possession. It's a flame that must be tended, passed from hand to hand, or it can be extinguished by war, by social collapse, by simple neglect. Our own digital civilization, for all its power, isn't immune to that same truth. Ultimately, the silent gears teach a lesson in humility. They dismantle the modern myth of linear progress. Human achievement doesn't march in a straight, upward line from primitive to advanced. It can soar to astonishing heights in specific times and places, only to recede, leaving barely a trace. The ancient Greeks, in this one domain of mechanical calculation, reached a level that rivals the intricate clockwork of the 18th century. They were our peers in that specific art. That realization should temper any sense of superiority we might feel looking back. It asks us to view past civilizations not as steps on a ladder beneath us, but as fellow travelers who, in their own ways, solved profound problems with creativity and skill we are only now learning to fully appreciate. The mechanism's final message isn't about what was lost. It's about the capacity for ingenuity that has always been part of the human story, waiting in every age for the right conditions to bring it to light. The legacy of the Antikythera mechanism isn't in a museum. It's in the questions it makes you ask. For 100 years, this corroded bronze piece has been a key, turning in a lock we didn't know existed. It opened up a new view of the ancient mind. We see the Hellenistic thinkers weren't just philosophers with scrolls. They were engineers with lathes and files. They had this drive to take abstract ideas, the moon's elliptical path, the looping track of Mars, and make them physical. Make them mechanical. This device is that drive fully realized. Babylonian astronomy, Greek geometry, and master metalwork, all coming together to create the first analog computer we know of. Its story, from a chance find on a Roman shipwreck to being understood as a prediction engine, it did more than add an item to history. It rewrote the history of technology. It showed that sophisticated mechanical computation isn't a modern invention. It's an ancient ambition that shatters the simple story of linear progress. It shows a landscape of forgotten peaks, where genius could reach a height and then the knowledge of how to get there could be lost for over 1,000 years. That loss might be its deepest lesson. The mechanism is a testament to how fragile complex knowledge is. The workshops that made it, the masters who designed it, the patrons who paid for it, that whole world disappeared. That specific flame of ingenuity was put out by history's shifts, by conflict, by the slow erosion of a specialized craft. Its silent gears are a caution to our own digital age. That no advancement is permanent. Understanding has to be kept. It has to be passed on, or it can slip away back into time. But even with that, the final feeling isn't loss. It's awe and a sharp curiosity. This object challenges what we assume, and it inspires modern engineers. It fuels wonder. It deepens respect for the classical world. Shows it as a place of innovation, not just tradition. As the research goes on, new dives at the wreck, new scans of the fragments, we're reminded the past isn't settled. It holds these lessons about innovation, about how ideas move between cultures, about that human drive to build, to understand our place in the cosmos. The Antikythera mechanism isn't just a relic, it's an invitation to look at history differently, to listen for gears clicking in the dark, and to never stop wondering what else is out there waiting to be found.